So I'm going to try and answer a few more of your questions quickly from the first discussion. The one here is how to set up file storage system for Lightroom files and photos more systematically. The external hard drive idea, which I suggested, the Mac Air, which is not enough space for most people's pictures, and how to set up a backup file. Not only where to keep them, but also how to use keywords and metadata to sort and identify them more systematically. And I do agree, this is more of a concept than an idea than an actual, like, this is the rules. Some people will write rules, and there are rules. I think the most important thing is that you have an external drive, that the drive is very, very reliable drive, and that anything you do is backed up a minimum of 2, and if not 3 times. And you may just want to sketch out some possibilities of how are you going to use this. Are you traveling and you need something that's easy and reliable and light? Or are you working at your home computer and you just need something that is a backup to put somewhere? And later in the quarter we'll have some more things about different drives and different options. But I think right now, again, start with a testing drive just for this class, a small drive and a small group of photographs you're going to practice with. And as you get the idea of how you're going to use Lightroom, some of these questions will be answered by your very process of how you use it. I feel like it'll be a real challenge for me to learn about editing. Thank you. I'm glad it was clear when I edited, but how do you do it step by step? And I think there's a couple of keys to this if we go over to Lightroom and go to the Develop module on any photograph. And one of the first keys for me is to realize that Lightroom was designed by photographers for photographers. So if you go down on the right-hand side, in order all of the options, you will be doing a really good job in the start. Now some of this is about training your eye. Do you want something lighter or darker? Do you want it to be a more neutral color or a warmer color for the emotive feeling you're going for? And that's a long-term process that you'll learn as you keep on going. But if you start at the basics and then work your way down, experimenting with each of these different sets, I think you will really find that it will begin to make sense. The next thing I would really say, and one of the reasons I encourage many of you to consider printing for the class, although you do have other options for final projects, is that when you print a photograph, you really can live with it and learn what you did well and what you would like to do better. So I really recommend that as another piece of how to get better actually at the controls in Lightroom. I'm looking to invest in a MacBook, and I'm curious what other people are using. And I did recommend in writing on this one to go to our book and look, and to go to the Adobe site. When you're going to upgrade, you have to do the research and even the research as to what's going to come out next month and how much difference that will make to you or not make to you. If you're staying with Mac, the possibilities are limited. As much RAM as you can afford would be my one strong recommendation. Okay, and I answered this, people have answered this in passing, and I've written some things too. And Lightroom versus Photoshop. Lightroom tends, although it's now doing more specific things to do things that are more global, Photoshop's going to do things that are more specific. And so once you've gotten the photograph basically ready, that's when you might go to Photoshop to do something that is more elaborate. Collaging would be done in Photoshop. You might also find that heavy-duty retouching. When I scan a negative that has a lot of damage, that's definitely a Photoshop job because I can do it, I can undo it, I can have layers. I have a lot more power there in Photoshop. So most of my photographs spend most of their time in Lightroom, but almost all of my photographs make a visit to Photoshop for final polishing. The idea of cataloging, there's another question later that we'll come to that I do want to make clear that a catalog is a catalog. It is a listing of the images. This is not the image. I could see a sample of the image, but the image is here on my hard drive. This is it in the catalog. And then if I go to the Finder, here is that image in my hard drive, right there. What's here is a reference. So it's very important that you keep and secure both the catalog, which you can see is on my hard drive, Yordall Kate, and the actual image, which you can see is here in this folder, on the same hard drive in fact, but still it's a separate entity. What you're seeing here is a reference and is information. So if I go to one of my pictures that I've done a bit of editing on this one, you'll see that what's in Lightroom is a reference to this image, a preview of this image. And if I close the presets and look at the history, you can see a very long history of things that I've done to this photograph. That is what the catalog does. It keeps track of what I've done to the photograph. If I go to library, you can see I'm keeping track also of the keywords. Some of these have keywords. This one has keyword Canada. And of other information about the image. And so that catalog is my way to quickly organize my photographs. Okay, website. I've made a lot of websites in Lightroom. Just quickly, I'll take these images that I have in this best from the class exercise and go to the web. And you can, when we get to output modules and create our creative modules, you'll find there's many, many different possible setups for a website. And I can change almost everything about it to a certain point. So we will practice with this later on, and you can export it either to be used on a desktop or to put on a website if you have your own site. That's a real key. You have to have a place to put it to use it for full functionality. Some of them play as slideshows, some of them are Flash, some of them are HTML, some of them are more playful. So it's just something to explore, and we'll look more at the functionality and what you can do with it later. It is absolutely an advantage to use RAW when working anywhere. The RAW file is all the data. The RAW file will have so much more information than a JPEG. And in JPEG, you're already throwing away. Lightroom is made to work with RAW. It will work with JPEG. It will work with TIFFs. It will work with other file formats. But its purpose, its core, was to help professional photographers use RAW files and edit them quickly and efficiently. Your images references, and I want to change it, so your images are not stored in Lightroom. What's stored in Lightroom is references to your images. That means that you need to back up your images separate from your catalog. Very, very, very important. 4 and 5 are not that different. I wouldn't necessarily go to the Lightroom 4 book to study Lightroom 5, but the changes were less than in some other upgrades. My preference would be that you use Lightroom 4 book with 4 and Lightroom 5 book with 5. But you can probably, if you refer to the user manuals that I also gave you links for, you can probably help a little bit with that confusion. Is Lightroom easy and friendly application to learn? I think Lightroom's very, very friendly. I would not say easy. I think it's rich and in a way that makes it complex. But it certainly is more accessible than full-blown Photoshop. I think there's some different things to work with, and some of what is difficult is really learning to see photographs rather than the applications. Learning to know which design or development tools will express your ideas. Now that's the challenge. Okay, I took Lightroom 2 quite a few years ago, although I learned a lot. Things did not go as smoothly as hoped, and the keywords were forgotten and broken links. Okay, what's the best way to keep it simple? In some ways, it's keeping on top of things. I think that's one thing that's really important. Another thing is just taking the time, if we go back to the library, really taking the time to go through and make interesting, useful keywords. I'll show you my master catalog a little while later with all my keywords, and I'll show you how you can reorganize things. I think the other thing is noticing here in the folders and noticing where your pictures are and making sure that you don't move anything outside of Lightroom. You must move everything you're going to move inside Lightroom. So in this catalog, I have a few images that are on my Macintosh. The rest are on this hard drive. If I come here, I'm going to come and go to this in the Finder. If I out here in the Finder, by some reason, decide that I want to rename this, and I rename it Trees. I don't know why I would do that, but say I did, Trees 1933. Because I'm outside of Lightroom, you'll notice that when I come back to Lightroom, I'll get this little marker. It's a question mark in Lightroom 4 and an exclamation point in Lightroom 5. That tells me that the picture is missing, and I would have to work to reconnect it. That's a real problem, and that's a problem a lot of people have. Once that picture is renamed properly, then that little symbol goes away. So being really diligent to do everything you do inside Lightroom, even if you wanted to move things from one folder to another, if you wanted to rename a folder, you want to right-click or control-click and you can rename a folder, but do it from inside Lightroom so that you don't end up with the kind of mess that many of us have experienced. I don't know that it's very useful unless you did a lot of work in Lightroom 2 to move that into Lightroom 5. What I would do instead is re-import when you're ready after you're a little bit further along in the class. Re-import the images from your hard drive directly into Lightroom 5 and basically start from scratch, as you say. There's a couple things you could do, and this might be something that would be better for us to talk one-on-one when you're ready to do it, and I can give you if there's some work that you wanted to preserve, what would be the best method for preserving that work versus bringing in your Lightroom 2 mistakes into your new Lightroom 5 catalog. Okay, those are the questions so far. I'm so glad you're all here. I'm enjoying your questions and your thoughts. Remember to take things one step at a time, back up. We'll talk more about that later. And really enjoy looking at the photographs, and remember it's all about photography. Thank you so much.